Love's Garden. The train slowed for a pub in 1972. The Black Swan. A cozy place with an open fire, men from the steelworks playing dominoes, and the ghost's younger self sitting across from Alfred Shaw, Maggie's father, a gray-haired man with bushy sideburns, a painter's hands, and a quiet, assessing gaze. 2 pints of Guinness on the table between them. My dad died in the war, he said, answering a question Alfred had not directly asked. My brother, too. Car crash. I was in the car with him. Alfred nodded slowly. Maggie told me. She also told me you sell books, that you're good at it. I tried to be. The thing about Maggie, Alfred said, is that she was always going to do whatever she wanted. Her mother was the same. You can't hold someone like that. You can only walk beside them. He took a sip of his pint. I had a garden once. Best garden in Sheffield. Prize-winning roses. You know what I learned? A garden isn't something you finish. It's something you tend. Every day. You miss one day of weeding, the weeds take over. You miss a week, and you're starting from scratch. He met the younger Wilbur's eyes. Love is a garden, son. You have to keep tending to it. People think love is a feeling, but it's not. It's an act. It's the work you do every day to keep it alive. The ghost watched his younger self nod, shake Alfred's hand, feel the warmth of acceptance. He had heard the words. He had even believed them at the time. But the ghost knew now what he had not known then, that belief without practice is theory, and theory does not survive ambition. Alfred approved of him. That was the outcome. Alfred shook his hand at the end of the night and said, "You'll do," and the younger Wilbur felt a warmth he had not felt since his own father died. Acceptance. Blessing. The permission to love and be loved. The train rushed on, and the ghost saw the proposal on the same bench in Encliffe Park where they had talked about art and dead parents, and then the wedding. A blur of confetti, and his best friend Charlie stoned in a corner, and Doreen crying happy tears, and Maggie in a white dress that made the ghost want to close his eyes against the brightness of it. The train stopped only briefly for happiness. Agnes had warned him, "Happiness has the least to teach us." And then, before the ghost could brace himself, the train was slowing again, and outside the window, the Grand Canal glittered in the August sun of 1974. The bridge at the summit, Venice. The ghost had arrived at the moment he had been dreading and longing for in equal measure. He followed his younger self and Maggie out of the water taxi and into the lobby of the Hotel Proserpina. He could not stop himself. He walked behind them as they checked in, as Maggie laughed at his attempts to speak Italian, as they climbed the narrow stairs to their room with its view of the canal. He stood in the corner of the room while Maggie unpacked, and the younger Wilbur opened the shutters, and the light flooded in. "I miss you, Maggie," the ghost said aloud, though no one could hear him. "I miss you, and you're right there." They went to a cafe. They talked about Bellinis and Titian and whether Venice did gritty. Maggie explained how standing in front of old paintings calmed her down, how art was the closest thing to time travel she had ever found. "It lets you stand in front of a moment that happened 500 years ago and feel what the painter felt," she said. "It's the closest thing to time travel." The younger Wilbur was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I thought I saw something strange today. On the Rialto Bridge. I thought I saw—" He stopped. "It doesn't matter." "What?" "A man who looked like me, but old. Older, anyway. Wearing the same clothes." He shook his head. "It was nothing. A trick of the light." The ghost stood on the train, watching his living self in the cafe. The man on the Rialto Bridge, the man his younger self was pointing at, was him now, the ghost, as he would appear to his younger self from across the canal. The loop had already closed. He was the warning he remembered receiving, and he remembered the whisper in his ear, "You need to keep hold of this," and the faint sound of a train whistle. Time had folded over itself. He was here now as he had been here before, watching himself watch himself. The observer and the observed collapsed into a single impossible moment. Maggie leaned across the table and took the younger Wilbur's hand. "You're allowed to be happy," she said. "You know that, don't you? You're allowed to enjoy this." "I am happy," he said. And he was. The ghost could see it. This was the summit of his life. This was as close to heaven as he would ever get. And then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter. A letter from the bank, a loan offer, the chance to open a second bookshop, to expand, to grow the first step on the road that would lead to the Budd Books empire, To London and New York and the Waldorf Astoria and the empty house in Bedfordshire and the phone call from Maggie, 30 years too late. I'm going to accept it, he said. The loan? I'm going to phone the bank the day we get back. Maggie's smile wavered. Are you sure? We've only just started. The shop is doing well. Do we need to? It's the opportunity of a lifetime. The timing is perfect. I can do this, Maggie. I can build something. And you? What about us? What about this? She gestured at the cafe, the canal, the golden light on the water. I don't want to lose this version of you. You won't, but the ghost knew she would. He knew the version of him sitting in this cafe would be replaced by a man who checked his watch during dinner, who took phone calls on Sundays, who flew to New York while his wife miscarried alone on a bathroom floor. He knew because he had been that man. He was that man's ghost. The ghost stepped forward. He leaned close to his younger self's ear. The rules screamed in his head, no meddling, no speaking, no interference, but Miss Graham's voice was there too, and the weight of everything he knew was coming. And the memory of Alfred saying, "Love is a garden," and the picture of Maggie crying in an empty house, and he could not stop himself. You need to keep hold of this, the ghost whispered, because soon after you get home, it's all going to go to shit. The younger Wilbur flinched. He swatted at his ear as if brushing away a mosquito. Are you all right? Maggie asked. Something a mosquito, I think. It's nothing. The ghost stepped back. He was shaking. He had done it. He had spoken. The air around him felt charged, electric, as if the whole of existence was holding its breath. Then his younger self looked up. He looked across the canal toward the Rialto Bridge, and his face went white. There's a man there, he said, on the bridge. He looks like me. Hez is wearing the same clothes. Hez waving. The ghost was on the bridge. The ghost was watching his younger self see him. The loop was complete. Wilbur, there's no one there, Maggie said. There is. He's right there. Can't you see him? No, there's no one. The train whistle blew a long, mournful sound that cut through the Venetian evening. Agnes was calling him back. The stop was over. The journey was continuing. The ghost did not move. Old Bean? The conductor's voice, sharp and urgent. You must get back on the train. No, the ghost said. He was looking at his younger self, at the fear and confusion on his face. No, I'm staying. I have a plan. You don't have a plan. You have a feeling, and feelings are not plans. And if you stay here, you will unravel everything. The observer effect, the ghost said. Quantum physics. The act of observation changes the outcome. If I stay, if I'm here, if he knows I'm here, he'll know the future. He'll see it, and knowing it will change it. Knowing it will destroy it. Agnes was almost shouting now. The train, the rules, you don't understand the consequences. I understand enough. The ghost turned away from the canal and began walking toward the hotel. Toward his sleeping self. Toward the moment when the worlds of ghosts and the living could meet. I'm sorry, Agnes. Behind him, the train whistle blew again, and the world began to dissolve. The dreamer boards. What happened next was not gradual. The wardrobe in the hotel room disappeared. Then the table lamp. Then the table. Then the canal outside. The gondolas, the sky, the very color of the air gone, replaced by a darkness that was not empty but full of potential, the kind of darkness that exists before the first light of creation. The ghost found himself standing on a platform, a station. A sign above him read simply, Wilbur, and there, on a bench, wearing the same short-sleeved shirt and flared jeans that the ghost himself wore, was his younger self. Sleeping, breathing, a man who had gone to bed in a Venetian hotel room and woken up somewhere that was not a dream. His eyes opened. Where am I? The dreamer said. His voice was thick with sleep, his body still adjusting to the unreality of the place. Who are you? You're the man from the bridge. I'm you, the ghost said. I'm the version of you that didn't change, that made all the wrong choices. I'm what you become if you take that loan and open that second shop and keep running from everything that hurts. The dreamer stared at him. This is a dream. It's not a dream. It's the midnight train. It's the journey you take after you die. But you're not dead yet. You're asleep. Your sleeping self is here because I broke the rules. Why? Because I need you to see something. The ghost held out his hand. I need you to see the rest of your life. A sound. At first a rumble, then a roar, and then the train arrived. Not the smooth, elegant locomotive the ghost had come to know, but something wilder, faster, a blur of green and brass that was barely under control. The Duke of Gloucester, the toy train Dudgy had stolen for a baby brother who could not yet speak. It pulled into the station with a screech of metal on metal, and the blue door flew open. The conductor was inside, her face tight with alarm. Both of you. Now, the train as it's barely holding together. The unpredictability of this were in a whole new world. The ghost pushed the dreamer toward the door. They jumped aboard, and the train surged forward, and outside the window there was nothing but darkness and speed and the sense of a future rushing toward them like a wall of water. "Where are we going?" the dreamer asked. "You're going to see the future," Agnes said. Her voice was strained. "Not a dream, not a vision, the actual future, the one your ghost lived through. Brace yourself. Cussed. Then." The mirage of success. The ghost stood beside the dreamer at the carriage window and began to explain. "You're going to open hundreds of bookshops," he said. "Budd Books. You'll be in every city in the country. You'll be on television. You'll be rich. You'll be successful beyond anything you've ever imagined." The dreamer's eyes widened. "Hundreds? And it will be a betrayal." The window showed a flash of images, accelerated and brutal. A man in a suit, older now, cutting ribbons in front of gleaming shop fronts. The same man on the cover of a trade magazine, the Ziggy Stardust of books, Charlie had called him. The man accepting awards, shaking hands, making speeches about the power of literature to change lives. "Betrayals look very much like success," the ghost said. "That's what makes them so easy to commit. Love slows you down. Love asks you to stay in one place and tend one garden. But slowing down is what you should have done. Instead, you used work to avoid pain. You used ambition as an anesthetic. You took every opportunity to be anywhere except alone with your own thoughts." The train shuddered. They were passing through a memory now, a house in London, large and elegant, and a boy walking through the dreamer's body as if he were made of smoke. "Your son?" the dreamer asked. "No, just a boy, but you'll want one. You and Maggie. You'll try." The image flickered and was gone. A nice Sunday roast. The train slowed. Outside the window, a semi-detached house in Sheffield, 1977, resolved out of the darkness. The dreamer looked through the glass and saw a dinner table, a roast, carrots cooked with nutmeg. His living future self, older, harder, the boyishness already fading, sat across from Maggie and his mother Edith. "I'm telling you we're moving to London," the older Wilbur was saying. "The business needs it, the expansion needs it, it's not a discussion." Edith set down her fork. "Your brother always said you'd run away. He said, 'Hell leave us, ma'am. The first chance he gets, hell leave.' And you did. Dougie died 13 years ago. You can't keep using him as a weapon." "I'm not using him as anything. I'm telling you what he said, and I'm telling you he was right." The dreamer watched his future self's jaw tighten. "Maggie and I have made this decision together." Maggie was sawing at an overdone potato and saying nothing. Her silence was the loudest thing in the room. "I have news too," Edith said quietly. "I was going to tell you after dinner, but I'm engaged. To Cecil, Mr. Parkin." The older Wilbur's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, disbelief, fury. "You're marrying the landlord who tried to evict us? The man who paid for Doogie's funeral when I couldn't," Edith said. Her voice was flat. "Who donated to the hospital after the fire? Who has been kind to me for 30 years? He was a monster. He was a man doing a job, and he was there, which is more than I can say for my own son, who hasn't had a proper conversation with me since the Sunday he decided London was more important than family." The older Wilbur stood up. "I'm leaving." "You do that," Edith said. "You're very good at it." The dreamer turned away from the window. "I don't want to see any more. There's a lot more," the ghost said. The train moved on. Edith's funeral, a stumbling eulogy. 3 years later. A small gathering in a Sheffield church. Mr. Parkin, now his stepfather, sat alone on a front pew in a smart black suit, nobody meeting his eye. The older Wilbur stood at the pulpit, giving a eulogy he had cobbled together on the train from London, a speech that listed his mother's favorite musicals and misquoted Irving Berlin. "The song is over," he said, "but the music lingers on." The ghost, watching from the back of the chapel with the dreamer beside him, felt something close to nausea. He had not had a proper conversation with his mother in 3 years. He had let her marry Mr. Parkin without his blessing. He had let her die without ever telling her he understood the burden she had carried, understood the grief that had hardened her, understood that she was not a monster, but a woman who had been asked to survive too much. Not the wake, Charlie talked about Caribbean funeral traditions and a philosopher who believed there was no such thing as the abstract future, only a past that was ahead of us. The ghost watched his stepfather leave alone, leaning on his umbrella, and followed him out to the car park. "I'm sorry," the ghost shouted at the old man's retreating back. "I'm sorry I was rude to you. I'm sorry I never thanked you. You paid for my brother's funeral. You were kind to my mother. I never. Mr. Parkin got into his car and drove away. He could not hear. Ghosts cannot apologize to the living. The death of John Lennon. The train stopped in a hotel room. The Waldorf Astoria, Manhattan, 1980. Skyscrapers gleamed outside the window. The older Wilbur, aged 35, sat on the end of the bed in an embroidered dressing gown, a typed speech on his knee, the television murmuring in the background. The dreamer stood beside the ghost and watched. 35, the dreamer said. What's happening? Just wait. On the television, a news bulletin broke in. John Lennon had been shot. Outside the Dakota building, dead on arrival at the hospital, the older Wilbur stared at the screen and felt something he could not name, a connection between this death and something inside himself, a thread of grief that ran from Dougie to Lennon to every loss he had ever refused to mourn. The phone rang. "Wilbur?" Maggie's voice, small and cracked with tears. "I've been trying to reach you. I didn't know if you'd be in your room. I needed to hear your voice." "What's wrong?" "I lost it. The baby. I lost the baby, Wilbur. I've been bleeding all morning. I cleaned it up myself. The bathroom floor. I cleaned it all up and I didn't know what to do." The dreamer watched his older self's face. He watched the calculation happening behind the eyes, the speech tomorrow, the audience full of American publishers, the opportunity of a lifetime. "I can fly back," the older Wilbur said. "I can catch a flight tonight." "No, stay. Do your speech. There's nothing you can do here. It's already over. I'm so sorry. I know." But the ghost knew, and he could see now from the corner of his eye, that the dreamer was turning pale, that his younger self was beginning to understand. The older Wilbur was also relieved, relieved to have permission to stay, relieved to have an excuse to do what he had been doing for years, choose work over presence, choose ambition over grief, choose the future over the present moment that was bleeding out on a bathroom floor 4,000 miles away. "I was a coward," the ghost said quietly. "I was terrified of being a father. My own father died when I was a baby. My brother died when I was 19. I didn't know how to love someone without losing them. So I stopped being there. I stopped being present. And Maggie grieved alone. The train moved on." Wilbur fires Charlie, 3 years later. A pizza restaurant in Pimlico, the Italian Stallion, red and white decor, Lionel Richie on the speakers, the older Wilbur, harder and richer, sitting across the table from his old friend Charlie, whom he would one day fire without warning. Charlie was balding now, wearing glasses, sunburned from a holiday he had taken with Claudette and the kids. They talked about nothing. About holidays. About television. About music. Two lifelong friends catching up over lunch. Then the older Wilbur set down his fork and said, "Charlie, I'm going to have to let you go." "What?" "We're restructuring. The American investors want someone with more international experience, a finance guy. It's not personal." Charlie stared at him. "Not personal? I've worked for you for 10 years. I built the distribution system. I hired half the staff. Remember when the shop was one room and a leaky ceiling? I was there. I was loyal. I never complained. You were great. But the company is different now. The company is you. You're the company. And you're firing me because you don't want anyone around who remembers who you used to be." Charlie stood up. His voice was shaking. "You're running, Wilbur. You've been running since Dougie died. But you can't outrun a ghost. I hope you know that." He walked out of the restaurant and out of the older Wilbur's life, and the dreamer turned to the ghost and said, "How could you do that?" "Because I had mistaken being caffeinated and adrenalized with being alive," the ghost said. "Because I had forgotten that loyalty is rarer than opportunity. Because I never once, not once, realized that Charlie was the best employee I ever had." The empty rooms. The train pulled up outside a large, intimidatingly handsome house in South Kensington. A house with a brass door knocker and a gravel drive and an interior full of beautiful objects and total silence. Maggie was in the living room, wearing a Kandinsky exhibition t-shirt, the television showing the X-Files with the sound off, and she was staring at the wall. On the wall was a framed drawing of a bandstand in Kensington Gardens, something she had made years ago, after they gave up trying for another baby, after the miscarriages and the specialists, and the slow mutual agreement to stop hoping. The older Wilbur came in, phone pressed to his ear, talking about shopping center locations and initial public offerings and the second Sheffield shop that would replace the old Palace Cinema. "Did you know the cinema is being demolished?" Maggie said when he finally hung up. "I heard. It's a good location. I worked there. I sold chalk ices there. You came to see The Sound of Music with a girl who complained about me?" "I remember. Do you?" Maggie looked at him, and the ghost saw in her face the accumulated weight of years of silence. "I found a lump last month, in my breast. I went to the doctor alone. I sat in the waiting room alone. I got the results alone. It was benign, but I did it all alone because you were in meetings and I couldn't find the right moment to tell you, and eventually I stopped trying." The older Wilbur lowered the phone. "Why didn't you? Because you weren't there. You haven't been there for years. You're a businessman now. You're not a bookseller. You're not the boy who warned me about broken glass. You're not the man who kissed me under a street lamp. You're someone who takes phone calls during dinner and flies to New York while I'm bleeding on the bathroom floor." The dreamer turned away from the window. His face was pale. "I don't want to be him." "You haven't seen the worst of it," the ghost said. Maggie leaves. The train took them to the conversation that ended everything. The same house, a different day. Maggie sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded in front of her, and the older Wilbur standing by the window. And between them, a distance that had grown so gradually neither had noticed until it was too wide to cross. "My father has Parkinson's," Maggie said. "He needs someone. He doesn't have anyone else. I want to move back to Sheffield." The older Wilbur turned. "Sheffield? You want to move back to Sheffield?" "To care for my father. Yes, Maggie, I'm about to take the company public. The IPO is in 6 months. I'm not asking you to come." Her voice was calm. It was the calm of someone who had already decided. "I'm telling you, I'm going. You can come with me or you can stay. I'm going either way. That's an ultimatum. It's not an ultimatum. It's a statement of fact. I have given you 20 years of my life. I have followed you to London. I have waited for you to come home from meetings. I have sat in hospital waiting rooms alone. I've buried my own dreams so you could chase yours. I am going to care for my father. The only question is whether you're coming with me." The older Wilbur said nothing. His mind was already running the calculations, the IPO, the shareholders, the optics of a CEO relocating to Sheffield. The dreamer watched his future self and saw what the ghost had always known, that he had lost the ability to choose love over ambition. It wasn't that he didn't love Maggie. It was that love had become abstract, a concept rather than a practice, a garden he had stopped tending years ago. "You once told me," Maggie said, "that I was the only shining thing. On the night Dodgy died, I was the only shining thing. Do you remember that?" "Yes." "When did I stop being shiny?" 2 days later, Zotter." Maggie wrote a letter. The ghost had read the last page of it on the night he died, but now he watched her write the whole thing, pages and pages of careful handwriting, a document of love and loss and the slow erosion of hope. She left the letter on the kitchen table and walked out of the house. The older Wilbur found it when he came home. The ghost and the dreamer watched him read it, watched the expression on his face shift from confusion to denial to a grief so large it could not find an outlet. The final page: "I love you, Wilbur, but I am also leaving you. I don't know where the past hides, but I will meet you there." String theory. The train hurtled forward now, and outside the window the years unspooled in rapid montage. The dreamer watched his older self live through the decades that followed. The IPO, the money, the big house in Bedfordshire, too large for one man. The older Wilbur eating alone in front of the television, getting a blood test, hiring an estate agent, binging Netflix, walking a beagle he had bought for company and never quite learned to love. Growing old, growing tired, losing the thread of whatever it was he had once been chasing. At a shop window in Bedford, the older Wilbur, 80 years old now, his face lined, his shoulders stooped, stopped to read a small handwritten card. Piano lessons, Nora Seed. All ages welcome. It's never too late. He tore off a tab with the phone number. A piano teacher, the dreamer said. Her name is Nora, the ghost said. She will become important. She will teach you more than piano. But we're not there yet. The train shuddered again, a deeper shudder this time, a lurch that threw the dreamer against the window. Agnes stumbled in the aisle. The rules, the conductor said. The broken rules. The train as we're running out of track. The unpredictability is compounding. The dreamer looked at the ghost. What happens if the train stops? The ghost didn't answer. He knew what happened. He had known since the moment he whispered in his younger self's ear on the Rialto Bridge. The rules existed for a reason. The train was not built for two passengers. One of them would have to leave. But not yet. Not while there was still something to show. The train rattled on, and somewhere ahead in the darkness, an old man was about to pick up a phone and hear Maggie's voice for the first time in 30 years. Episode 3. The only way to learn is to live. The train had stopped, shuddering, but only barely. It sat on an invisible track somewhere outside a house in Bedfordshire, a large handsome house with a gravel drive and a tennis court and 5 acres of garden that one old man walked alone. Inside, through a window, the ghost and the dreamer could see the living man sitting at a baby grand electric piano, his stiff 81-year-old fingers moving haltingly across the keys. Beside him sat Nora, the piano teacher. She was in her late 30s, with a calm face and a strand of hair that kept escaping from behind her ear. She wore a simple cardigan and held a pencil she tapped lightly against her music stand. The old man finished the first section of Bridge Over Troubled Water and let his hands fall into his lap. Nora gave a small clap. That was really good. I really don't think so, he said. His voice had the slight croak of old age. I am still so clumsy. I struggle to keep pace with all those flats. Come on, Wilbur. It was a lot better than last week. You've been practicing. A little. I have a lot of time. The dreamer pressed his face close to the train window. That's me, he said. That's what I become. I'm so old. The ghost said nothing. He watched his older self with a stillness that suggested he had been waiting for this stop for a long time. You should listen to this, the ghost said. This one matters. Nora smoothed the stray strand of hair behind her ear and turned to a new page in the songbook. Let's try something else, something that might be a bit freer for you. She played a few opening chords, a simple progression, warm and familiar. The old man placed his fingers on the keys and began to follow her lead, but as the notes unspooled, something shifted in his face. The stiffness in his jaw loosened. His eyes, which had been fixed on the sheet music, drifted upward toward the wedding photograph on the alcove shelf, a photograph of a young man with chestnut brown hair and a woman in a blue dress, standing together in a garden in Sheffield. His finger stopped. Wilbur? He didn't answer. His shoulders began to shake. A tear slid down the crease beside his nose and dropped onto the ivory keys. I'm sorry, he said. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. This song, take your time, Nora said. His wife Maggie used to sing this song. On their honeymoon, in Venice, she sang it on the water taxi. She was wearing a blue dress, and he couldn't finish. The grief had been stored so long that its release was not a single sob but a full-body tremor, a giving way of something structural. Nora reached across the piano and took his hand. You loved her very much. I ruined it, he said. I ruined everything. I was so busy trying to be someone, trying to build something, and she left. She left, and I deserved it. I deserved every bit of it, and I've been alone for 30 years, and the dreamer turned away from the window. You have to, the ghost said. Why? Why do I have to watch myself fall apart? Because you need to understand what you're trying to outrun, and because the next thing she says, listen. Nora was still holding his hand. She waited until his breathing steadied, then spoke in a voice that was quiet but unhesitating. 7 years ago, she said, I tried to kill myself. The old man looked up. His tears were still falling, but his attention had sharpened. I took an overdose. Pills. I was in a very dark place. I had lost someone I loved very much. And I felt like there was nothing left, like I had made too many wrong choices and there was no way back. She released his hand and folded her own in her lap. I survived. Obviously. And when I woke up in the hospital, I had this feeling, like I had been somewhere, like I had seen something. I couldn't remember what it was, but I knew with absolute certainty that somewhere, somehow, there were versions of my life where I had made different choices, where the person I loved was still alive, where I was happy, where everything had gone differently, and those lives were all happening at once, all around me, like radio stations I couldn't quite tune into. The dreamer leaned forward. What is she talking about? Just listen, the ghost said. I know it sounds strange, the piano teacher continued, but after that, I stopped believing that my life was just one fixed thing. I stopped believing that the past was a verdict. I started teaching piano. I started talking to people. I started living, not because I had figured anything out, but because I realized the only way to learn is to live. The old man stared at her. The only way to learn is to live. That's right. That's what I've been doing wrong. I've been trying to learn by regretting. I've been studying my mistakes like I could pass an exam on them. Ugh. But you never let yourself keep living. No. Nora smiled, small and sad. Well, it's not too late. You're 81, you're still here, you're still playing piano. That's living. The old man looked down at the keys. For a moment, there was something in his face that the dreamer recognized, a flicker of the young man who had once stood on Glossop Road with a book in his hand and a hole in his shoe, waiting for something to begin. The ghost turned to the dreamer. Do you understand what she just gave him? Permission, the dreamer said quietly. She gave him permission to stop hating himself. More than that. She gave him the line that will hold everything together when everything falls apart. Remember it. You're going to need it. The last phone call. The train moved on, but the landscape outside the window had changed. No more memory scenes floating in darkness. Now the train seemed to be traveling through something thinner, more fragile, a membrane that trembled with every jolt of the wheels. Agnes stood at the front of the carriage, one hand braced against the paneled wall. Her conductor's hat was askew. We're running out of time, she said. The unpredictability is accelerating. Recons. We're not supposed to be here. Where is here? The dreamer asked. The last hour, the ghost said. My last hour. The hour I died. They watched through the window as the front door of the Bedfordshire house opened, and the piano teacher stepped out carrying her music bag. The old man followed her onto the driveway, waving goodbye. The evening was cool and dim. A tractor mower sat silent on the far edge of the lawn. Bloody hell, this place is massive, the dreamer said. It is. 5 acres, tennis court, woodland. No one to share it with. You had no one to play tennis with. I know. And you lived here alone? What about London? I'd had enough of London. The dreamer looked at the ghost with something between accusation and pity. When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. Don't Samuel Johnson me, the ghost said, and there was a flash of real irritation in his voice. When a man is tired of London, he is tired of London. London wasn't the answer for us either. My reason for London was wrong. Ambition, money, expansion, all of it was a drug to soothe the pain. What I needed was to slow down, to sit still, to tend the garden. He gestured at the vast lawn, the empty drive. Instead, I bought this, a monument to everything I had already lost. Inside the house, the phone rang. The old man turned from the driveway and walked back through the front door. The ghost and the dreamer watched him cross the hallway, his steps slow, one hand touching the wall for balance. He picked up the receiver. Hello? A pause. And then a voice the ghost had not heard in nearly 30 years, a voice the dreamer knew as intimately as his own heartbeat. Wilbur? It's Maggie. The old man gripped the edge of the hall table. Maggie, I'm sorry to call so late. I know it's late. I had a dream. I had a dream about us. We were in Venice. We were on the water taxi. I was wearing my blue dress. And we were so happy, Wilbur. We were so happy. And I woke up and I don't know why I thought I needed to call you. I just needed to hear your voice. The dreamer watched the old man's face. His eyes had closed. His free hand was pressed flat against his chest, as if something inside it was coming loose. Thank you for calling, the old man said. Thank you. I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about Venice. Have you? Every day. For 30 years. Silence on the line. Then his wife's voice again, softer now. Why didn't you call? I was ashamed. I was so ashamed of what I did, of what I became. I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I always wanted to hear from you. Really. I just didn't know if the man I married was still in there. He's still in here, the old man said. He got lost for a long time. But he's still in here. The dreamer turned to the ghost. Is that true? Is the man she married still in there? The ghost looked at his older self, at the stooped shoulders, the lined face, the hand pressed against the chest. Yes, he said quietly. He is. It took me 81 years to find him again. But he's in there. Can we speak again? The old man asked. Tomorrow? I would like to speak again. I'd like that, Maggie said. I'd like that very much. Good night, Wilbur. Good night, Maggie. He hung up the phone. For a long moment, he stood in the hallway, breathing slowly. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs. The dreamer knew what was coming. No, he said. No, I don't want to see this. You have to see it, the ghost said. This is how it ends. This is how it always ended. And if you don't watch, if you don't feel it, you won't understand what you're being asked to do. The old man climbed the stairs to the attic. He opened a dusty trunk and pulled out a box of papers. Inside the box was a letter, pages and pages of careful handwriting, yellowed with age. He didn't read the whole thing. He turned to the final page. His lips moved as he read the words aloud, his voice frail but steady. I love you, Wilbur, but I am also leaving you. I don't know where the past hides, but I will meet you there. He pressed the letter to his chest. A grimace crossed his face, a sudden sharp contraction of muscle, and then he collapsed. The dreamer shouted. He lunged toward the window, but the ghost held him back. You can't! He's dying! Yes, I died, right there, on the attic floor, at 1 minute past midnight. I died holding her letter, and there was nothing I could do to change it. The dreamer was shaking. Then what was the point? What was the point of showing me all of this if you can't, because you can change it? The ghost turned to face the dreamer, and his eyes were fierce. You're not dead. You're sleeping. You're in a hotel room in Venice in 1974, and you're dreaming all of this. And when you wake up, if you wake up, you will remember. You will know what happens if you take the loan. You will know what happens if you move to London. You will know what happens if you fire your best friend Charlie, if you miss the miscarriage, if you let Maggie stop being shiny. You will know everything, and you will have a choice. Agnes stepped forward. Her face was pale. The train is coming apart, she said. We have to do this now. The sacrifice. There were 2 doors at the end of the front carriage. The ghost walked to one and placed his hand on the handle. The dreamer walked to the other. The conductor stood between them, straightening her hat with trembling fingers. You need to go first, she told the ghost. You have to be gone so he can wake up without you. But what happens when I leave? We don't know. Everything is unpredictable. This was the gamble. The ghost turned to the dreamer. The moment hung between them, the dead man and the dreaming man. 2 versions of the same soul, standing at opposite doors on a train that should never have carried them both. Listen, the ghost said. I'm sorry. I gambled with your future. If something goes wrong, if you don't wake up, that's on me. But if you do wake up, please try to remember. Remember all of it. And live by what you've learned. And please make Maggie happy. The dreamer swallowed. His fear was visible, a trembling in his jaw. But he nodded. I will. I promise. And one more thing. When you see her, when you wake up and see her in that hotel room, tell her you love her. Don't wait. Don't assume there's time. Tell her now. Tell her every day. Tell her until she's sick of hearing it, and then tell her again. I will. The ghost looked at Agnes. Will he remember? All of it? I don't know, she said. This has never been done before. Then we'll find out together. The ghost pulled open the door. Beyond it was nothing, not darkness, not light, just an absence, a void so complete it seemed to pull at the edges of the carriage, unmaking the air around it, naked it. The ghost looked back one last time, at the dreamer, at Agnes, at the portrait of his 29-year-old self hanging on the carriage wall, the portrait that had aged with him, that showed a man with chestnut brown hair and a short-sleeved shirt and a life still ahead of him. Au revoir, he said, and then he stepped into the void. The portrait went blank. The dreamer stared at the empty canvas where the ghost's face had been and felt something tear inside him. Grief that was not his own, but also entirely his. A loss that belonged to the future but was happening now, in this impossible carriage, on this impossible train. Then the train began to break apart. It was not an explosion. It was an unraveling. The walls peeled away like wet paper, the green velvet benches dissolved, the windows shattered, and the shards flew outward into nothing. The dreamer grabbed the doorframe of the remaining door, the door that led back to the hotel room, back to 1974, back to a life he now knew how to live. Agnes stumbled. The floor beneath her feet was fragmenting, pieces of dark wood falling into the void. She reached for the dreamer's hand. "Hold on," the dreamer shouted. "Hold on to me." But the conductor shook her head. Her hat slipped from her head and spun away into nothing. "I can't come with you," she said. "This is as far as I go. I was only ever here to guide him and you. No, no, I'm not leaving you." "You have to." Her face was calm now, a calm that carried the weight of her own long journey, the bookshop, the neglected son, the regret she had carried into death. "You have a life to live, young bean. A real one, the one he gave up so you could have it. Agnes, au revoir." She let go of his hand. "Au revoir, young bean." The train disintegrated, the dreamer fell. He fell through darkness, and then through light, and then through a sensation that was not falling at all, but being pulled, being dragged upward through layers of sleep like a swimmer breaking the surface of a deep lake. His eyes opened. The waking. He was in a hotel room. The sheets were tangled around his legs. The air was warm and smelled faintly of canal water and coffee. Through the window, Venice glittered in the late afternoon sun. 4/7. Beside him, his wife stirred. She was lying on her side, wearing a white cotton nightdress, her hair spread across the pillow. She blinked sleepily at him. "Are you all right?" she asked. "You were talking in your sleep." Wilbur, he was Wilbur now, just Wilbur, the dreamer, awake and alive and 29 years old, sat up in bed. His heart was pounding. His skin was damp with sweat. He looked around the room. The wooden shutters, the painting of the Virgin Mary, the door that led to the bathroom where Maggie had hung her blue dress. The blue dress. She had worn it on the water taxi. She had sung Bridge Over Troubled Water. That had happened hours ago, maybe, or a lifetime ago, but it had happened. "How long was I asleep?" he asked. Maggie propped herself up on one elbow. "About 5 minutes. You said you were tired. You lay down and you were out immediately. Are you sure you're all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have," Wilbur said. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat there, breathing. The dream, it had been a dream, but it had not been a dream, was still vivid in his mind. The train. Agnes, the portrait, the old man on the attic floor, the phone call, the letter, the long, slow decades of solitude, and the ghost who had looked at him with fierce eyes and said, "Make Maggie happy." "What did you dream about?" she asked. She sat up and placed her hand on his back. "Everything," he said. "Our whole life. What happens if I take the loan? What happens if we move to London? What happens if I—" He stopped. He could not tell her what happened. Not yet, not like this, but he could tell her what mattered. "I'm not going to do it," he said. "Do what?" "Take the loan, open more shops, expand. I'm not going to do it." Maggie removed her hand from his back. "Wilbur, what are you talking about? You were so excited about the loan. You said it was the opportunity of a lifetime. It's not. It's a trap. It's a—" He struggled for words that would make sense without the context of a future only he had seen. "I don't want more than this. I don't want more than the shop, more than us, more than our life. This is enough. This is everything." Maggie studied his face. There was something in her expression, not disbelief exactly, but a cautious hope, a willingness to trust what she was seeing, even if she couldn't understand its source. "You're serious," she said. "I've never been more serious about anything. Because of a dream? Because of a dream that showed me what happens if I choose wrong, and am choosing right. I'm choosing us." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and cupped his cheek with her hand. "All right," she said. "No expansion. Just us. Just the shop. Just this." "Just this," he said. And for the first time since he had woken, he felt something in his chest loosen a knot of anxiety he had not even known he was carrying. A fear of the future that had been so constant he had mistaken it for ambition. "I love you," he said. "I love you too. No, I mean I love you. I'm going to tell you that. Every day. I'm going to tell you until you're sick of it." Maggie laughed, a small startled sound. What got into you in those 5 minutes? About 80 years of regret, Wilbur said, and a piano teacher. The confirmation. They dressed and went to dinner. The restaurant was called La Zucca, and he had booked it weeks ago, before the wedding, before Venice, before he had any idea what the future held. And now, walking through the door, he felt a prickle of recognition that was not déjà vu, but something sharper, something that came from the other side of the dream. The place was warm and noisy. Opera music played softly in the background. A mechanical fan whirred on the reception desk. A mustachioed maitre d' in a black shirt greeted them. Buonasera, buonasera. We have a reservation for 8 p.m. The name is Wilbur Budd. The maitre d' checked a large leather-bound book, then nodded. Ah, yes, here you are. They were led to a table by the window. Maggie sat down and opened the menu. What is Bigoli? She asked, and his heart skipped. He had heard those words before, not in this life, in the other one, the one the ghost had shown him. He stopped chewing. Wilbur, what is it? He stared at the man. The birthmark, the bald head, the exact table, everything the ghost had described, everything the train had shown him. It's real, he said quietly. What's real? The dream. It was real. All of it. Maggie set down her fork. Wilbur, you're scaring me a little bit. I know. I'm sorry. But I need to tell you something. I need to tell you, he took a breath. When I was asleep, in the hotel room, I dreamed that I was on a train that took me through my entire life. I saw us get married. I saw us move to London. I saw you leave. I saw myself die. And then I woke up, and I knew that this was the moment I had to choose. The loan, the expansion, the money it leads to London, and London leads to everything else. And everything else leads to you standing in a kitchen in South Kensington asking me when you stopped being shiny, your words, Maggie, in the dream. Her face had gone very still. When I stopped being shiny, that's what you said. You said I once told you that you were the only shining thing on the night Dudgy died. And you asked me when you stopped being shiny. And I didn't have an answer. Because I had stopped noticing. I had stopped seeing you. I was so busy building something, building a future that I forgot to live in the present. I forgot to be with you. I forgot to tend the garden. Maggie reached across the table and took his hand. Her eyes were wet. Who are you right now? I'm the man I want to be. The man I should have been. The man I'm going to be, if you'll let me. Because of a dream? Because of a ghost, he said. My ghost. The ghost of the man I would have become if I had made the wrong choice. He gave up everything, his eternity, his afterlife, everything so I could wake up and choose differently. And I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing you, I'm choosing us. I'm choosing the shop as it is and Sheffield as it is, and a life that doesn't require me to be the biggest or the richest or the most successful. Just want to be happy. I just want you to be happy. That's all. That's the whole thing. She was silent for a long moment. Around them, the restaurant hummed with conversation and clinking glasses. The bald man with the birthmark laughed at something his companion said. Then Maggie lifted his hand to her lips and kissed his knuckles. All right, she said. No London. No expansion. No becoming a terrible businessman who fires his friends. Just us. Just Sheffield. Just the bookshop. And Sunday dinners with my mother. She blinked. Sunday dinners. I've been hard on her, harder than she deserves. She carried a lot. After Dad died, after Dudgy died, she carried a lot and I never thanked her. I never told her I understood. I want to do better. I want to be gentler. Who are you? Maggie asked again, but this time she was smiling. I'm Wilbur Budd, he said, bookseller, husband, son, brother. I'm the man who stood on Glossop Road with a hole in his shoe and a book in his hand, waiting for something to begin. And here it is. Here it is. The walk through Venice. After dinner, they walked. The streets of Venice were narrow and quiet, the canals lapping softly against the stone. Street lamps threw golden light onto the water. Somewhere, a bell tower was ringing midnight. They crossed a small bridge and emerged into the vast openness of the Piazza San Marco. The square was nearly empty, the basilica glowing at the far end, the bell throwing its dancing vibrations toward the stars. In the center of the square, a violinist was playing. He stood alone, his case open at his feet, drawing long, mournful notes from his instrument notes that seemed to rise into the night air and dissolve among the constellations. Wilbur and Maggie stopped to listen. "I want you to tell me," Wilbur said quietly, "if I start to lose this one right here, make sure I never sack poor old Charlie." "Why would you sack Charlie? He's been brilliant. And he loves you. I know, but the future can do things. It can turn you into someone you don't recognize. I don't want that to happen. I want to be the man I am right now, in this square, listening to this violinist. I want to be him forever." She squeezed his arm. "You're a strange man, Wilbur Budd, I know. But I love you. That's the important part." He reached into his pocket and found a coin. He flipped it into the violinist's case, a small bright arc in the golden lamplight. The violinist nodded without breaking his melody. "These are the good old days," Wilbur said. "What?" "Something someone told me once. Or something someone will tell me. I can't keep track anymore." He turned to her. "The only way to learn is to live. That's another thing someone told me. Someone who isn't born yet. Someone I'll meet when I'm 81 years old and learning to play piano." "Wilbur, you're not making any sense." "I know, but it doesn't matter. What matters is, here we are, in Venice, at midnight, you in your blue dress, me in this ridiculous floral shirt, and a violinist playing something that sounds like a question and an answer at the same time. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if the shop will succeed or fail. I don't know if we'll have children. I don't know if my mother will ever forgive me for all the ways I've been distant. I don't know any of it. And for the first time in my life, I'm all right with that." Maggie leaned her head against his shoulder. "So what do? We make it up as we go along," he said. "We live. We tend the garden. We show up. We tell each other the truth. We don't run from pain. We don't run from happiness either. We just live." The violinist played on. The bell tower fell silent. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. And Wilbur Budd, bookseller, husband, brother, Livinus, survivor of a journey no living man had ever taken, stood in the center of Venice and felt the weight of 81 unlived years lift from his shoulders. Somewhere, in a place beyond time, a train had stopped running. A portrait hung blank on a carriage wall. A conductor named Agnes walked alone through the wreckage of a broken carriage, straightening her hat, ready for whatever came next. And in the Piazza San Marco, a man who had been given a second chance took his wife's hand and walked toward the water, toward the bridges, toward the uncertain, beautiful, unscripted future. "Thank you," he whispered to the ghost, to Agnes, to the dead man who had stepped into nothing so he could step into life. Then he stopped whispering and started living. The violin is still playing in Piazza San Marco. A coin drops into the open case. Wilbur says to Maggie, "Let's make it up as we go along." The story stops there. It never tells you whether they stayed happy. Never tells you how many years the bookshop kept its green and gold sign. It only tells you that a man who was already dead traded his eternity for 5 minutes of a living man's time, and those 5 minutes held the weight of a whole life. You just heard that exchange. Matt Haig wrote this book after The Midnight Library. That fact is worth pausing on. The Midnight Library gave Nora Seed a universe of alternate lives, every unread book a path not taken, every life available to sample before deciding whether to stay alive. That novel's comfort was, somewhere, a version of you is happy. The Midnight Train offers a different comfort entirely. Wilbur gets no other lives. He has one track, the life he already lived, irreparable and fixed. He cannot try on another destiny. He can only sit on that train and watch his failures from beginning to end. And then someone asks him, after seeing it all, "Do you still love the person you were?" Both books share a midnight, but a genuine philosophical gap sits between them. The library's answer, regret, comes from not knowing how many ways you could have lived. The train's answer, you regret because you know exactly what you turned into, you just never had the nerve to look at it. This is a real reversal. After writing a novel where the answer was try every possibility, Haig wrote one where the answer is look harder at the one you have. Not what if, but look what you missed. Not try them all and then choose, but you get one shot, don't run off course again. The turn follows the logic of someone who once wrote a memoir about depression. When Haig broke down at 24, he didn't need more options. He needed to see his one and only life again to endure it, to recognize it, and to come back. So the ending isn't a guarantee. Wilbur, awake again, is still a man who will feel sorrow, who will make mistakes, who will be afraid of the dark. His brother's grave is still in Sheffield. The only difference is that he stops running from the costs he now knows. He knows exactly what he could ruin, so he chooses not to ruin it. It's knowledge bought by death, but only the living can spend it. The train has departed. The library is still there. Neither book is sufficient on its own. The listener has to decide how to walk the rest of the road. Was the coin Wilbur dropped into the violin case a wager on luck or a wager on nerve? No one answers for him. All he says is, "Let's make it up as we go along." That's a promise, not a conclusion. The living can make it up as they go. The dead man has already traveled his track. The rest of the journey belongs to the one who stayed awake. The train whistle drifting over the Venetian canal, it isn't goodbye, it's departure.